Nathan here today, and we're going to talk about the foundation of physical training and how that is going to enhance and virtually just, Nathan, explain it to us because I understand the mind-body connection, and a lot of our listeners do, but do they really? Do they really, they hear the term a lot, but what does that mean when somebody has a true mind-body connection, and what does it mean when they don't?
Yeah, well, thank you, Ross, for first of all for having me. And I think it's a great question. I think first of all, it means many different things to many different people because everybody is
Right.
unique.
Right.
And one of the fascinating things is the diversity in people. And yet there are certain commonalities. So we live in sort of that, dialectical tension, that we're very unique, like a snowflake, but we
Hmm.
also have very shared common experiences, shared physiology. And so there are sort of these best practices which weave themselves through our activities. There are these sort of universal principles that weave themselves through our lives. Somebody once said, whatever country you're in, whatever language you speak, when you have a child, that's a powerful experience. If you have a home or you get a home, if you lose a job, these are things that people all understand sort of universally in many ways. And when it comes to the mind and the body specifically, um, I like to think of it as, if I can borrow this, I had seen a podcast that you were on, and it said, or you said in the podcast that when you first met Gary, that you guys, your wives knew each other, but that
Yeah.
you did not. And I thought
Right.
that was amazing. Like, right? Like here they are hanging out together, and you have no idea. And if somebody had said, well, Gary Johnson says that blah, blah, you'd be like, Gary Johnson, who's Gary Johnson? And so the reason I bring that up is because you're always entering into a relationship first before you can transfer information. Because we always think like, well, we're going to ask somebody a question, they're going to tell us the answer, and then we'll have it. But the truth is, if you don't know someone, if you don't have a relationship with somebody, if you haven't gone some distance with them, people can actually tell you fascinating things and you just may not hear them. So you might have heard something that Gary Johnson said, and your wife said he said it, and you wouldn't have recognized it. It would have just gone in
Mhm.
one ear. But many years later, after you met him, after you knew him, after you spent some time, if you heard that he told you something, it might carry more weight, or you might hear it, or you might pay a little more attention. So one of the things about the mind and the body and learning about the mind and the body is it's not just sort of this information overspill, but it's also very contextual in terms of what relationship do you have with somebody and what's being shared in that container. So I want to thank you again for inviting me today,
Sure.
to your container. And I know that many of the people that I'm, speaking with and with you are meeting me for the first time, so that the things I'm going to share, some of it may make sense, some of it may not, and that's to be expected, like on a first meeting. So that's the first thing that I would
Right.
say about that. Yeah.
Well, you've been in the healing arts industry for what, 20 years now?
Yeah, for a long time. Yeah, yeah. I
Mhm.
started out in traditional healthcare and then I got into the healing arts. My gateway movement practice, as I like to say, was yoga. Even though I grew up, my father was a doctor, I heard a lot about medicine and I played sports and all of that. I wasn't really in a dedicated movement practice, and so that when I got into yoga, it was sort of the first time that I really, there's sort of this very passionate phase that people can get into when they get, whether it's golf or whether it's yoga or whatever it is. And I
Right.
entered into that, first just as a sort of a student, just somebody taking yoga classes. And through a very serendipitous sort of events and a sort of mysterious stranger who showed up one night, and turned out to be this person, this very unlikely story. I wound up getting more and more involved and then eventually decided to become a teacher, and then was, traveling all over to, study this wherever I could, became interested in
Uh-huh.
movement, uh, you know, and then, became very dedicated to it. In yoga, there are practices with 6 days a week. And, when you train, it's, it's just a lot of time and a lot of hours, and a lot of study. And then from there, as I emerged out of this many years of being very, very involved and very, very, and yoga will always be a part of my life, but I
Right.
became interested in other tools. So personal training and strength development became very interesting to me because I got very passionate about doing hand balancing and handstands. And I realized that after all this time, even with all the knowledge that I had, I still didn't have the strength that I wanted. So I became very interested in strength training, became a personal trainer, got certified by the American College of Sports Medicine, and got interested in other modalities, body work, and the list goes on, because the mind and the body are such a complex thing that there's no one discipline, there's no one person, there's no one
Mhm.
group of people who can hand you the answer. That's why it's such a interesting field to be involved with.
Right.
And we're doing this summit, which is coming up, called, the Excellence in Exercise and Movement Summit. And one of the things that's great about it is we've drawn professionals from all different modalities. So we have scientists who are going to talk about metabolism and, the deep function of the body on the inside, right? To come at
Right.
it from that perspective, which is a very
Right.
particular way of looking at it. We have,
Hmm.
people on the level of Cirque du Soleil. They're not from Cirque du Soleil, but that level of, performance in, that field, talking about hand balancing and handstands and what that journey is like, which most people don't even know because they just, like they see it from the outside. They don't know how much goes into that. We have, we're going to talk about strength training, the martial arts and the history of the martial arts. We're going to look at the coaching relationship and communication and conflict. So we have a very wide variety of different professionals, some academic, some very, niche into movement, niche into strength. And the reason for that is exactly what we're talking about, that the mind and the body are such a diverse, ever evolving understanding that many different professionals can look at it in different ways, and you can still find more. And what's nice about it is what we're really trying to do is to integrate it, to bring people into it a way so that it's practical to their lives, so they can say, okay, how do I strengthen my body? How do I maintain my body? How do I stay out of pain? In a practical day-to-day way. So that's the art of training, which is, I'm busy. I have a life. I have kids. I've got bills to
Right.
pay. I got a job. I don't have any time. How do I actually just do this? That's the art of it, because you can have all the science and you can have all the knowledge and all the skill, but real life is the first thing you have to deal with. And so the ability to be able to bring it into real life and do it if you have 20 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and know how to do that in a sustainable way that becomes part of your life for who you are with your body, that's the art. And then there's the science and the best practices. And then there's the, the even the spiritual and the wonder of how these very technical practices, like something like a handstand, teach you these deep skills of patience, and these deep skills of going through your life. So all of this, as I've just kind of enumerated right now, can't be shared in one conversation. You can't say hi and then launch into all of this, because people are just going to be overwhelmed, which is why we took, a number of days, a lot of days, so people can come at it slowly. And the best way to do that is really to start with the information coming to you from the emails.
Yeah.
Then we have the recorded sessions, the live sessions. So you can do that, if you go to the site. For the people who do want to go deeper, not everybody does, who's this strange guy? I don't know if this is for me. But for the people who do, you go to mindbodyliteracy.com, you click on the summit link, you put in your email, and then you can get a very slow, titrated introduction to walk in this door and see and look around if it's for you. So, yeah.
Right. And we'll put that link down in the comments. So let's talk about, I mean, we hear this all the time, the physical aspect about life, and then there's the mental, and then there's the spiritual and such. What are the pros and cons about what you do? My belief system is one that the body is what I call a giant pumping system. It's a giant pumping station, and there's only one self-actuating pump in the body, and that's the human heart. And everything else, all of our other metabolism, is based on movement. And modern society just doesn't move to the degree that it was designed to be moving. How do you think about that?
Oh, for sure. No
Mhm.
doubt that movement does some amazing things for you, not only in the aesthetics and the, look and the composition, but in the health and the metabolic health.
Right.
Just when you contract your muscles, most people don't know, just the contraction of your muscle does amazing things in the cells.
Right.
So, in the fancy science terminology, it's the upregulation, but the actual receptors, and this is why we have this, summit too, because most people, what's a receptor? We go through that.
Right.
But the actual receptors for insulin I think of it like the King Arthur movie, where the sword rises and the Lady of the Lake brings it up to King Arthur. Well,
Hmm.
these receptors actually rise to the surface of the cell, and it changes the way that your body is processing insulin just by contracting your muscle. So not only are there physiological things happening inside your body when you're moving that are changing the mental clarity, the endorphins. There are many, many, many levels to this. And what you also see on a just very practical level, because I've done all sorts of, like I've done the strength training road, and I've done the yoga road, and I've done some martial arts, and I've done all these
Right.
different things. But what you see is that when you get into a lifestyle where you can incorporate it, and it doesn't have to be so overwhelming. You don't have to take the journey that I took, but you find what works for you, and it's a regular thing, and it works for you, who you are in your life, and you do it what we might call the least effective dose, or the minimum effective dose,
Right.
right? So you're doing the least amount that you need, because everybody has different levels of stress,
Hmm.
and you don't want to be doing a huge thing when you're going through a very stressful time. You want to do less. So when you get the right dose of stimulus or stress in the right amount for you, but you do it kind of repeatedly, you start to really notice the changes, and it becomes almost, I wouldn't say easy, but it's almost like they appear. And I think it's for exactly the reason that what you're talking about, which is we're designed for it. So it's like if you
Right.
put gas in your tank, and if you have an unleaded tank, you don't put diesel in, guess what? Your car runs better. And if you put diesel in, it runs worse. So if we're
Right.
designed for movement, and we start to give ourselves these little doses of movement, that are the right amount for our car, we start to notice that our car runs better. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting that you bring up the way that insulin works in the body because I mean, you know, diabetes is at an all-time high, insulin resistance is at all-time high, and they continue to only blame the diet and the food that we eat, which is part of the problem that people are running into in this fast-paced, fast food, fast everything world that we have these days. And so, but it really comes down to the physical aspect of how the body is able, or perhaps trained, to process the food that we eat and what how it's metabolically going to absorb the nutrition or store the nutrition. So how does the physical aspect, how does the amount of muscle that you have on the body, or how the amount of fat that you have on your body, how does that all that work together or not
I
work
think
together?
it's a great question. And I think that, an important thing is these are complex things, and not to, I think it can get easy to, for people, I'm just aware, to sort of do self-blame or something. And this is not so much what this
Sure.
is about.
Right.
It's about understanding, there are advantages and disadvantages, and different tissues and parts of your body have different reasons and wherefores for being
Hmm.
there, and the more you can know a little bit about that, the easier it is to work in concert with it. And to give a perfect example, one of the things we are going to be talking about at the summit is fats. And people, when they hear the word fats, often think they're bad. Just they're bad.
Exactly.
Fats are bad.
Exactly.
But fats actually play an important role in your body. They
Right.
they have a job to do. There's a reason that they're there. They make up some of the membranes of your cells. They're used in certain ways. Fats are actually one of the fuels, all along with carbohydrate, protein. They're one of the
Mhm.
macronutrients. So
Right.
it's just want to start off by saying nothing is necessarily good or bad. It's when we're using something in a way where its purpose is um, not for what we would like to see. And the reason I also mention this is you can get into the other end of the spectrum. There is such a thing as doing too much exercise. There is such a thing as body dysmorphia, where people worry so much about how they look, and they think any fat is bad. So we're really, like with all
Mhm.
things, looking for a happy medium. We're not
Mhm.
looking for, either the way Muscle Mag, competition athlete extreme, and we're not looking for the other end of the spectrum either, but we're just trying to understand. So it's not like, oh, fat is bad, but too much, without sort of muscle, which is both functional, right? If you want to be able to get out of a chair, when you're older, you need a certain amount of muscle mass to do that.
Right.
You
Right.
a certain amount of strength to do that. So muscle is just a functional tool that helps us do things in life. It's very important. Strength is very important, but also it's got a metabolic advantage as
Right.
well
Hmm.
because it burns slightly more than fat tissue. It does really helpful things in our metabolism. It has many, many advantages. I won't bore people with all the details right now, but so it has a metabolic benefit and it also has a functional benefit. And the real problem with sort of an adipose tissue is a very there's a lot going on in adipose tissue. It has an immune function. It does a lot.
Let's
But
before you go
when you
any
get too
further,
much,
let's explain what adipose tissue is.
so basically fat,
Okay.
little, you can think of them like little, simple way to think of them is like little droplets, right? And when these
Hmm.
droplets get filled up and filled up, they're kind of at a bursting point, right? And so the body is basically processing nutrients. And so the thing is, you don't want to get to a point where the nutrients are, they're almost like, if you think of like where you've pushed things into all the kitchen cabinets and shelves and you stuffed them and stuffed them and stuffed them and now things are falling out.
Right.
That's not a place where you want to go to. And so using muscle or like when you lift weights is very helpful because it helps in this process of how your body is going to get a signal. I sometimes say it's like playing piano, right? When you play
Hmm.
piano, you don't just hit one key because that's not really good music. You hit multiple keys. And so in life, we're trying to hit a few different keys. One of them is what we eat, our nutrition. The
Hmm.
other is the signal that we give to the body to say, hey, here's what you should do with that nutrition we just gave you. And so using your muscles or lifting weights is a way to press that piano key that says to the body, take that nutrition that I gave you and use it in a way that's beneficial to me. And so that becomes a very helpful path because it's going to keep you stronger into old age. It's going to, keep you from, there's some protective effect. It's going to make you more functionally strong, but it's also going to help you with that signaling process that's going to move things in a helpful direction vis-a-vis your metabolism. And again, these are probably better questions done in a like learning session than in a podcast because they do get kind of technical,
But,
but that's what I would
but that's
say.
what
Yeah,
your summit's all about.
yeah, that
So
is what it's
that's,
about.
the
Yeah.
idea is that there are a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of misinformation out there that are, designed to make you, eat a particular type of food or brand of food, or to take particular type of pill, or to get a particular type of injection, which is another thing I'd love to go into detail with you about. Because we're always looking for that simpler way. And when it comes to the body, yeah, I love the analogy of the piano. I mean, I love
Yeah.
it because many people are now in that mindset of like just hitting one key. Bing, 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 bing. When it's just no, it's a sonnet. You just want that melody just to kind of flow. And when you have everything, you're hitting all those keys at one time. It's a whole different kind of experience in life.
Yes, I think that's the point. I think that's exactly it. I think you said it very eloquently there. That really people have for themselves desires in life and things they aspire to have their life be about, ways they want to experience life. That's really what it's
Mhm.
about. And
Right.
many different choices for many different people. Some people exercise may not be the thing, that's totally fine.
Mhm.
But we want people, just like we say, if you can read, it's going to open up some opportunities and some new experiences that you wouldn't have if you couldn't read you
Mhm.
know and it's not wrong to not be able to read, but there's so much more available to you if you can, and you have much more choice and you have much more and so that's why my company's called Mind Body Literacy, that if you have some of these skills, just if somebody was to give you a basic foundation, like someone gave you a basic skill to read, someone gave you a skill to do basic math, and you've used those your adult life for many things. Well, if somebody gave you a basic set of skills for doing what you just said, for playing the piano, for maintaining your body, for managing, for knowing which keys to hit, just the basics, you know, you could then really use those to not only get things flowing in a way that feels like your life is what you want it to be, but when you hit a problem or an obstacle, just like now, if you think, well, wait a minute, is that the tip? Is the tip 15%? Did I calculate that right? You would have the skills to go in and think, I can solve this problem. I know how. But if
Mhm.
nobody ever taught you how to do math in your head, you couldn't. And
Right.
so having these skills, and I'll just give you one quick example, and I see it all the time, which is, I was talking to somebody that I knew through some other folks, and they had been in some accident many years before, and they had sort of gotten to a place where they were trying to do a routine because it was important for them to, keep their strength up. And so I asked them kind of, what are you doing? And as I heard them tell me, I knew it was disorganized, it wasn't going to work. And so I started trying to say to them, well, what are you trying to do? What is it that you want? And then I tried to give them just the very, very basics. And that night I actually went downstairs and I started writing one of the things that we may give away for free at the summit, which is just the basics of how to build strength, so that, and many times I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, I started training, or I'm working with this person, or I'm recovering from this. And I'll say, great. Did they tell you what progressive overload is? You're trying to build strength. And they'll say, what? And I'm like, it's a foundational principle. It's like the basics of the basics. It's like addition, in math, or nouns
Mhm.
and verbs and reading and writing. It's the basics. And so often people, like you say, they just skip over it. And it's almost like there's a magic solution. You can do this or you can do that. But
Right.
all of these things do, as you said so well, come down to basic skills, which can be learned if you go through a simple, experience. If you walk through that door, of the school, and you sit down for 6 or 8 weeks to learn it. So I think it is well said that your life probably would be more complex and more difficult if you couldn't read. That's a fair
Right.
assumption, you
Mhm.
know, and it wouldn't feel like it was flowing so easily, and you'd wonder why you keep getting in car accidents, and why you can't read those green things on the road, and why you have to constantly not know how much you owe on your bills, right? So many problems would present themselves because of this underlying problem that you can't read. And so when you don't have this underlying set of skills, that here's how you can maintain your body, here's how you can solve a novel problem if you come up against it, here's something you can rely on, then you do start looking for the magic bullet, like you said. Yeah.
Exactly. So, with all this in mind, let's talk about longevity for just a minute. Um, I study a lot on longevity as far as nutrition, exercise, the mind-body connection, and et cetera. And there was um, a poll that was taken, maybe about a year ago, I believe. And they were asking people, how long do you want to live? And everybody, many people are like, oh, probably maybe 80 years old, probably 85 and such was kind of the basic standard answer. And then they changed that they changed the question a little bit. And they said, if you could be in the same physical condition that you are now, how long would you want to live? 120, 130, 140, and such. And what people, I believe, that people are conditioned to think that growing old means decrepancy. It means illness. It means pain. It means so many different things when it really doesn't. And I think what you're showing and what you're presenting in the summit is, kind of the foundation to living a longer, more satisfying, healthier, painless life and such. Because they've also, another study had said that one of the prime components or metrics of longevity is muscle mass, because as we get older, our body stops making muscle and we kind of go into atrophy and such. So it's more important as we get older. And when I'm saying older, I'm not talking 60s, 70s, 80s. I'm talking 30s and 40s that you have to start maintaining. Otherwise, your body will start to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your body will just simply stop producing proteins and muscle mass as like you're used to for the first 30 years of your life. So something from what you're attempting to do with your summit is to give people that knowledge that they need so that they understand, listen, this is where you're at now. It's not going to stay this way for the rest of your life. You've got to make some changes and you've got to apply
Mhm.
yourself, and that all starts with the knowledge because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly on target when you're picking up on the fact that there are cultural understandings. I think you said in the
Mhm.
thing that I saw that the matrix can be like the environment that you're in, right?
Exactly.
The environment that you're in determines so much of how you look at things. You go
Hmm.
to certain countries, you take off your shoes when you go inside.
Right.
You go to other people's houses in the United States, you don't. And so the environment that surrounds you shapes how you see customs, practices, what's possible. And we have a real myth about age being equated, as you so well said, with dysfunction, that it's inevitable, that it's going to happen. It just age is the same as dysfunction. Let me ask you, what would happen if you just stopped doing any repairs on your house? You never invested in it. You never did anything for it.
Exactly.
And you let your house sit there and everybody just said, well, that's just the way it is. Houses, we don't know why. Houses just decay. They just decay and fall down. And if you've ever seen a beautiful, 100-year-old house that somebody renovated and, they had the contractors in and put in a new room and like those houses look pretty nice.
Hmm.
They're still 100 years old, and you can look at a 40-year-old house and it can look like a shambles. So
Right.
this idea that it's inevitable is a myth. And in fact, you hear this, and I often talk to people about this. You'll hear sportscasters, people who seem like real authority, and they'll say, well, he's 40, so, and it's just not physiologically true.
Hmm.
There is some degree of truth to it because there are things like sarcopenia and there are changes that happen with reaction time.
Sure.
But in my world, you see people in their 60s, in their 70s, and these people can outdo people in their 20s. These people look like they can outdo people in their 20s. These people perform like they can
Hmm.
outdo. So you see examples of this. And so, and I think the other piece of good news is the body is so sophisticated. And of course, there are extremes, right? You get hit by a Mack truck in the middle of the road. We're not telling you, we're not talking about a magical world where everything happens. And we're not talking about, it's very hard to get people to the center. It's very hard to get people to the center when you have no basis for comparison. And that's one of the things that we do a lot of is helping people have appropriate expectations. If you think you're going to walk, as I often say, from one end of the United States to the other, and you're going to do it in a couple hours, you're not oriented to what you're going into. But the good
Right.
news is that the body is very resilient. It's fragile and vulnerable, but it's also very resilient. So as soon as you start doing things in a thoughtful way, the body will start to respond. And one of the problems is that people often give up because it's confusing or because they're frustrated, and then it
Right.
becomes a vicious cycle. Because they
Right.
gave up, nothing's happening. You know, because they're not doing anything, things go downhill. And so that just confirms the belief. But
Hmm.
quite the contrary, when you do things, and there, even before for one of the sessions, we're speaking about some practices from the martial arts, which go back literally almost more than 1,000 years, where people use them to strengthen their bodies, right? And this in temples and parts of the world in Asia,
Hmm.
um, and you don't have to be anybody special. These were people who were clergy. They weren't athletes or whatever. And and the use of these techniques, now I'm just telling you what's written, but when you read deeply about these techniques, they say, and some of this may be myth, it mixes together, but they say some of these people lived a very long time. And when I say very long, like
Right.
200 years, and again, take it with a grain of salt. But as you go through this learning journey and as you do these practices and as you see the benefits, as you see people, have an ameliorative impact from starting things, as you understand it on all these different levels, you see it's by no means a story of all hope is lost once you pass this red line in the sand, you
Right.
know, and that is a cultural myth that we cling to and which is out there in the same way there used to be a myth only clergy, royalty, and merchants can read.
Right.
And if you're not, you have no business doing it, and forget it if you're a woman, like, it's just these, you have no place in this, and that's just not true. Anybody can learn to read. And
Hmm.
and and it's the same thing. For the most part, do things for your body, because this ability to control your body, that's the other thing. One of the things we're going to go into is you see people lifting weights, playing golf, walking, but all of it starts with your body. All of it starts with the control of your body. And fitness often takes us into like all these fancy permutations of do this, and that's all wonderful and beautiful and exciting and different strokes for different folks. But even when you're lifting weights, it's the control of your body. The weight is an external load that you're holding, but you are controlling your body before you ever touch that weight.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what gives us the ability. This is what gives us the ability to make the change. It's the way we're built. It's the way our cells are built. It's the way our nervous system is built. It's the physiology that's going on inside of us. This is where the deep changes are happening. Now, we can use these principles of physics and external load to accelerate that, but you can see it in lots of different ways. We're going to talk about it from a lot of different perspectives. But I would say if we could get the industry as a whole to make a shift, part of the shift is to take back the ability to control your body. And that is essentially what people are saying. People are injured and they want to get better. They want enough control of their body to move in that direction. People want to lose weight. They want to control their body to change its composition. People want to play golf. They want to control their body so that they can hit that ball. Everything, people want to be great martial artists or UFC fighters, body control. Heart, can I make my heart stronger? Can I get fewer pounds? Everything comes down to, I want to learn how to change, manipulate, move in this direction. And all of that, just like, math has many different facets, but it's all math. All of these things flow from the ability to know how to use training to control your body. It all starts there. And that's the thing that we haven't given to people. And so no wonder people reach out for something else,
Mm-hmm. For clarity, when you're telling people or suggesting to people that they need to train their body, they need to exercise, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to go to the gym and they have to bench press, 150 pounds and they have to run 5 miles a day and such. It doesn't mean that. That's
Not
a
at all.
misconception.
Not
What
at
does it
all.
mean? What does it mean to you? Where would a person who likes what they're hearing is going to go to your summit, what basic rules are they going to learn to where they're like, I can do that. I can start there. Where does a
Yeah, well, I
person
think
start?
first it starts, as we said, with a relationship, getting to know people, beginning to enter into their world.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I said, people can't just give you information, they can give it to you to an extent, but you have to come into some relationship where you're spending some time, whether that's a summit for, a few days or a week, whether that's a course for 6 weeks or something. It's unrealistic to tell people, you can learn a foreign language in 5 days or 3 days. It's not going to happen. And so the first step is to get into that, relationship and to explore it. Once you're there, then I think it's a question of having a period of time where you can get some of the foundations and get some of the basics. So if we talked about progressive overload, now that's a strength issue, but that's just a basic concept which can be explained in about 10 or 15 minutes or 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a basic, it's just a basic idea. It's not the whole enchilada, but it's a basic concept. And so if you have, and often, where I think the fitness industry goes right is they will have 6-week programs or 8-week programs, but they tend to be specialized and people are going to like certain things more than others, and people are going to have different schedules, and that's all great. But getting sort of a basic approach, which is what my company does, is to give you sort of the basics of, okay, how are you going to fit this into your life, and what basics do you need to know so that you can do that. And what I often say to people is it's better to do it in phases, because you're not going to have forever. You're not going to be consistent forever. So, you have 2 weeks of vacation, or, you have a little time here. Take a focus period of time, work on it, then forget about it, put it aside and come back to it. So starting off by first finding people that you can be with, be around, who are going to, expose you a little bit to these ideas. Some people
Mm-hmm.
that I've worked with in very special areas, I met them and I was too busy and I didn't really get a good take on them. And a year and a half went by before I ever, met them again and then
Right.
started learning with them. And then I spent 6 weeks and my mind just opened up to their area of specialty. And I went, wow. But when I first met them again, I was just sort of like, And so first getting into that relationship, then getting into that period of time, whatever it is, the time in the summit would be a great way to get a taste. Doing a we have a program that people can get into, which takes them through, for a period of set time, but it's not forever, right? But it's not just a weekend. So getting yourself into some kind of experience, where you are setting aside some time where you can work on it, not forever, not nothing. This would be the best way, really, if you want to learn guitar, if you want to learn a language, anything, if you want to learn to read or write, having a period of time. That's what we all did when we went to school. We had this thing called school and we went, for a semester or 2 semesters or a year, and we got those skills. And we can't necessarily do that in our adult lives. We don't have the same amount of time, but you can recreate it by taking little chunks, of time. I give away sometimes
Right.
a book on nutrition, and it says, don't try to do it all at once. Take a chunk of time, learn a little, leave it, come back to it. And that's probably the smartest way
Hmm.
to approach it for people who have lives and are very, very busy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, take that little time to absorb it, implement it, come back, build upon what you just did, come back, build upon what you just did, and lo and behold, you have a new lifestyle that you've created for yourself. And
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a
and
long-term thing.
yeah, and what you're telling people is that, I'm what I'm getting from you and from our conversation earlier is that, you don't have to give up anything. You don't, and so a lot of people, when they're thinking about everything you're talking about, like, oh, I've got to give up all this time. It's like, you're not giving up time. You're better utilizing your time. Oh, I've got to give up, this type of food. It's like, well, no, you're not giving up food. You're replacing it with better quality of food that's going to do more for your body and such. And again, it's that mindset of we're so afraid of losing something that we don't see what we're gaining. Look at the phenomenon, I guess I'll call it, of diabetes. Is people's like, well, I don't want to give up my carbs. And it's like, well, all right, that's fine. You can keep all the carbs and all the sugar you want, but you're going to lose about 15 years of your life because you're going to die earlier. So it's a choice. And you've seen our material, and many people here have seen our material as far as it's all about choice. However, you have to make an informed choice. And that's what I love about your program, is that it just simply informs people like, listen, you can do whatever you want, but at least know going into it all of the benefits and the outcomes of doing it in a different way than what you're used to.
Yeah.
And I think knowledge is where it's where it all starts. I mean, this is a knowledge-based society that we have now, almost too much.
I think the two go together too. I think we are saying it very well that there is just this natural human thing that we all have about being afraid of the unknown. Like, what's this going to be like? And
Yeah,
maybe it's going to be really bad. And our minds
right.
kind of weave this story. I've done it.
Exactly.
I'm sure we've all done it. It's like, I don't want to go on that trip because I don't want to see that movie. And then you see the movie. It's like, oh, I love that movie. But you didn't want to go see it. Well, yeah, but I didn't know because like you didn't want to go
Yeah,
on that trip. I had a great time.
exactly.
You know, so before we know something, we have a very natural human instinct to protect ourselves. And what actually ends up happening a lot of the time is it's actually kind of different, which is as the understanding kind of gets absorbed in your mind, it's not that you have to try so hard. I'm not saying that there's not effort, there is, but it's when you see things differently, what you do naturally becomes different. So when I
Mhm.
studied nutrition and became a nutrition coach, all of that knowledge that went in, now the book sat there for me, right? But when I finally said, okay, now's the time and I'm going to do it,
Right.
and I put in the time, it wasn't so much that I had to give up anything, or I mean, I did play with things, but I chose to focus on it. And then when I walked into a supermarket, the way I saw things was different. So I naturally made different
Yeah.
choices. It wasn't that
Mhm.
I had to, if somebody said to you, you can get a much higher return in the stock market than you can in your savings account. And you're like, oh, well, you might naturally put more money in the stock market, I mean, so you don't necessarily have to force people. You just show them like this works like this and this works like this, depending on what you want to do and what you feel comfortable with. These are options that are out there in the world, right?
Right.
And so then people can make their own choices, do what is right for them, which they know better than you do, right? And you're not in a position of having to force them, but that understanding of, oh, this is what it is, and this is how it works. And now it's not just an imagination or a thing that I feel like, oh, I'm going to have to force myself. And I think we do get very caught in the natural human tendency to think it's about us. I mean, I was just talking to somebody about that in a session for the summit, but invariably people think there's something unique about me. I'm just, uniquely wrong in some way. So it makes it impossible for me, and when I train, those thoughts go through my head, you know, oh, I can't do it. Even with all the experience I have, and I've talked to people who are at the elite top level, they deal with the same thing, right? And so this idea that, oh, I can't do it or it's not possible really comes, I think, more from isolation and also from maybe not being aware of what the opportunities and possibilities are. And I think that's the definition of, education itself and learning, which is being, entering into the light, entering into seeing more possibility in the world. And I think that
Mhm.
really should be a more gentle process, and a process with a lot of acceptance and care, for ourselves and for other people, because it's hard work. It is, and even if it's not hard work in terms of forcing yourself or saying, oh, I've got to do this, it's hard work to step into something new. It's hard work to meet new people. It's hard work to invest yourself in something without knowing what the return. And every time I learn a new practice or work with a new professional, I'm back at the beginning, and it's always hard to feel like I've come so far in my life and I've been through so much and now I'm a beginner again, you know? So I
Right.
really understand the journey. And I think people who do understand the journey, I think they know it's not about forcing people. It's not about saying, here are the hard choices you have to make, but it's more about nurturing this process of emerging into a way of learning to see through somebody else's eyes, learning to see it in a different way. And then the
Mhm.
change becomes easier and not
Right.
as harsh as we imagine it, even though I don't want to represent things as if they're just simple and there's no work. If you don't want to do the work, the best choice to make is not to do it, because then it's not right for you. That's not your path, and that's beautiful and fine in its own way. Uh, but if you are sort of like, well, I'm on the fence and maybe I'm willing to see what it would be, that's where I would really suggest going to the website. You just check it out. It's 2 seconds of your time, mindbodyliteracy.com. Click on Summit. And if you have enough interest to go to mindbodyliteracy.com, then it might be for you. If it's not, that's totally valid.
I mean, I can honestly tell you that it's the countless times that I have read a book that I didn't want to read, watched a video that I didn't want to watch, watched a movie that I did not want to watch, and for whatever reason I did, and came away with some nugget of information. And I'll give you an example: is that we have a master class that we are in the process of putting together right now, and I was looking for right field information, and I found this one little piece, and I'm just like, huh, well, that will go with this over here. And then I just fell into this rabbit hole of more and more research on it. And I'm just like, it was like a gold mine. And I'm like, oh my God. And I called up Gary and I'm just like, you would not believe what I just found. Did you know this? Did you know this? He goes like, no. He goes, where are you finding all this stuff? And I'm just like, this is crazy that we have to dedicate a whole day just to going through all of this information. And it was so left field. It really was. It was, I was not looking for it, but it just came across, and I was on something that I was not looking for. I'm just like I heard just somebody had said one thing and I'm like, that can't be true. And I'm like, go do some research. And it was true. And then that led to something else that was true. And then that read to research papers. And then that led to this. And this just happened just a few days ago. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. So what you're saying is so true. I mean,
Yeah, and
you
I
could
think,
go through, how long is your summit? 2 hours?
oh no, the summit's many days. Yeah, it's going to be
A couple
many
hours a
days.
day or 1 hour a day? How is that?
Well, The sessions are pre-recorded and live, so there are
Hmm.
live sessions that people can come to. The
Hmm.
pre-recorded sessions, this will all be explained if you just sign up.
Sure.
You get an email, it tells you, it
Hmm.
walks you through all this. But basically, pre-recorded and live sessions, they'll be released. They're free for 24 hours.
Oh, awesome.
So you can watch, like, say, Monday at 9 a.m. the sessions are released. You have till Tuesday at 9 a.m. If Tuesday
Right.
sessions are released at 9 a.m., you have till Wednesday. So on and so forth.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so you can watch the pre-recorded sessions, and then the live sessions you can actually go to and practice and do things and experience it in your own body, see if you like it or not, and learn it live. Those obviously get uploaded a little bit later because they are live. We have to record them. We have to put them up. Sometimes they can get uploaded the next day, but usually the same day. You'll have 24 hours to watch those as well. And there's a free ticket. You just sign up with your email. You get a free ticket. Right now, it's the waiting list, so you'll get notified, but you'll be reserving one. And then for folks who want the information longer, because sometimes it does take time to digest this, there's also a paid upgrade, which people can get a paid ticket for. And there'll be details of explaining this to all people. But I think what you just talked about, as I saw your face light up, that's the exact process.
Yeah.
That's the exact process. Because in that moment, you're the expert. In that
Right.
moment, you're the reader. In that moment, you're saying, you don't need me. You don't need somebody else. You've got the fire in you. I could see it in your face. Hey, I just heard this one thing and I got curious about it. And now I'm exploring it and now I'm learning. That's the process. It's not me. It's not somebody outside of you. It's you.
Right.
You're going on that journey, but it took that little spark to
Hmm.
get you to go on that journey. And look, it was even fun.
Right.
You got excited about it. And so that's literacy. And I often say, let your questions be your teachers, because we
Exactly.
can give you all the information in the world, but your questions are going to be very specific to you, your situation, and they will draw to you the information that you need that's relevant. You don't need all the information in the world. You need the information that's relevant to you. So when you let your questions be the teacher and you have the belief that you can learn, well, I can go out and read a book if I need to. I can go out and figure out a math problem if I need to. And you believe that you have the ability to do it. Okay, I can figure out this body thing. I can figure it out. I may not know everything, but I can figure it out. Now we've given you the opening, the doorway, to that place which we're really talking about when we're talking about literacy, that
Exactly.
everybody should be literate. Everybody should have literacy, and that's really a great
Yeah.
example that you just gave of that process taking its place and you being along for the ride. And it's
Yeah.
not hard, it's not difficult. It's curiosity and exploration and opening up. And that can be an exciting and fun thing, which is
Hmm.
very much in line with what
Exactly.
we want it to be. Yeah.
And that reminds me, what you just said reminds me of, kind of one of my concerns about the way that AI is progressing and how handy it's become is because people can just like, they can find that information so quickly, which is good and such. But the question is, you have to know the right question. You have to have that spark to begin with in order to go and find that information. And your AI is only as good as the people that are programming it. And it has, I mean, I'm not talking bad about AI. I think it's going to be a great thing for the present time and for the future. But my concern about it is that it's going to make us lazy thinkers. And you're going to be limited. And what you're saying is that you can put something into, say, into chat, and it's going to give you an answer. But there's more to that, because it hopefully will spark another question, and then another question, and then another question. So when I was talking to you about what I went through a couple of days ago, um, it was the original event, we'll call it an event, of where I heard somebody say this about something totally separate, but I'm just like, and they were quoting an inventor, and I'm like, I've never heard that quote before. So I went to make sure that that was a real quote. Okay, doing my due diligence. I'm like, oh, that is a real quote. Well, why would that person say that? And then I went in, did a little bit more research, and then I'm like, okay, now I want a little bit more about this whole topic. And then that's when I went into into the AI. But each time though, a question was sparked. And that's what something like the summit is. It sparks questions and makes you curious to like, how can I be better? How can I start feeling better? How can I make my pains go away? How can I live longer? How can I lose weight? How can I be more limber and you know, maybe, you know, increase my muscle mass so I'm not as delicate. We'll put it that way. But these are the questions that something like this is going to spark for you, and then give you answers at the same time. So
No,
let's
I
talk.
think you're exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about who is going to be the presenters on your summit.
Sure. Let me just say before that, I think you're right that it's really about asking questions. That so
Mhm.
often we're about answers,
Right.
and
Yeah.
as a tremendously powerful and new and robust, invention
Mhm.
from human curiosity, I
Yeah.
will note. It came from human curiosity. AI did
Right.
not invent itself, but the power of asking questions. And one of the things that you see as you go further, there's so much we don't know. There's so much about basic things that we don't know, which you can either see as scary or you can see as beautiful. Like the
Mhm.
world is still being discovered around us. And how amazing is that? And that people themselves, like you did in that example, you can discover it. And in this summit, I'll be talking to somebody about something that I discovered in my living room. Right. And you say, well, how are you going to discover something in your living room? I was getting ready to give a presentation. I was looking up a fact that I thought was just like a little detail that would be no, and I found out, no, this little detail is not well known. And actually, most people don't know it. And I had to hunt down very obscure expert to answer this. And so you can be discovering things at all times. We are going to open the door by again trying to give you like sort of the poo-poo platter experience, but it's one that's a well-organized experience because the
Mhm.
pieces fit together. So whether that's talking to somebody who's an assistant professor, who's working in with metabolic function and is going to be talking about one of the macronutrients and how it functions inside your body, which can sound really dry, but it's sort of a fascinating look at how does our digestive system work? What
Right.
happens after you eat something? What about all this stuff
Yeah.
we hear about, when we hear about cholesterol or we hear about heart function or like these things that day to day we all kind of think about, but we never really sit down. Well, talk to somebody who does this for a living, and hear what a fascinating journey it can be, you know. We're going to have people who are going to talk about the art of handstands, right? But not just about sort of the party trick, but about something that everybody can relate to, which is the mental and emotional obstacles that we all run into anytime we want to achieve a goal. Now, in this case, it's a physical goal, but there's a whole mental piece to being able to, and an emotional piece to being able to achieve this goal that everybody who does it, whether on a simple level or a much more professional level, has to go through. And it's an experience that people go through. And so we're going to talk about the mental and emotional obstacles so that when people say, I don't feel like changing my diet, I don't feel like going to the gym, that seems really hard and I don't want to do it, that we say, you know what, that's a pretty common thing. And here's a way to explore what that's about and think about these obstacles that as human beings, we all run into. And let's face it, we all have times in our lives when things are going better and things are not going as well. We all are going to have ups and downs. So how do we think about mental and emotional obstacles? How do we think about, our food choices and our nutrition? We're also going to have, obviously, people talking about yoga, strength training, the martial arts, and many different aspects. When the registration page is released, people will be able to get a much more detailed version, and we'll be releasing information about the speakers and more details to the people who do sign up first. So the people who go to the waitlist page right now, where you can put your name on and get your free ticket reserved for you, and you're waiting. Those are going to be the people who are going to find out all the details first. So if people do want that, then it's mindbodyliteracy.com, and you just click on Summit and you can get that there. So
Sweet. All right. That's fantastic. What a show. So I think I'm going to end this with something that I learned 20 some years ago. So I may have told you this in our pre-call, but so there was a point in my life where I got very, very sick, and, and my body was literally just shutting itself down. And I went to the doctor, and they just wanted to give me a sleeping pill because I said I wasn't sleeping very well. And I'm like, well, there's more to it than that. I'm like, no, just try these, and this should make you feel better. And I'm just like, well, I wasn't satisfied with that because they couldn't answer my question. What's the problem? What is causing this? And so then I went to a naturopathic doctor, and after he ended our first meeting after 3 hours, he said, "Okay," he goes, "but I want to tell you something," and this stuck with me to this day. He goes, "Yeah, this," and it was quite a list of things. He goes, "And from what I can tell, and from what you described to me, your body's been telling you that there's something wrong. Now it's just making you listen." And that's how it works. That's how the body works, in my opinion, is that it's giving you all these signs that you've been ignoring. He goes, and then eventually it's just going to say, fine, if you don't want to listen to me, I'm just going to simply make you listen. And in some cases, it ends up being too late. In other cases, it's going to take you, in my case, it took me over a year to recover, repair my body, and learn not what I did wrong. Okay, not through any abuse of any sort, not chemical abuse or drugs or anything like that. It was just, I was very successful, and I just worked and worked, and I just pushed and pushed and pushed, and I pushed too hard. And I didn't listen to all the telltale signs that my body was just burned out. And so so what I did is I found people like Nathan who have the information that I needed so that I could make myself better. And this is something that everyone needs to stop, slow down, and say, I need information. I need to find the people who are right. And when you have such an assortment of experts that you got, and such, not all of this is going to pertain to everybody. It's just that one guy or girl or gal. It's just that one professional, that one expert that says, well, are you feeling this? Or is this happening? Or, have you experienced this? And we go, that's me.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that one piece that can put the puzzle together and start you on that journey of questions and more questions and more questions. So, Nathan, this is fantastic. We're going to get this out as soon as we possibly can, so we can build that list for you and get people on so that they can learn to just simply make lives better. So
Ross,
greatly appreciate
thank
you
you.
taking the time.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your spark with me. And sounds like that experience was another spark, although a harder one to go through, but that there are all these different sparks that set us into our learning journey. So thank you very much.
It led to where I am now. And I can honestly tell everybody that, I just had all my labs done just a couple of weeks ago. And my doctor, who's younger than me, said, you're in better health than me. And I'm just like, I think that's good.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. Nathan, thank you so very much.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good luck on the summit.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.